2 natural births, and in this video, I'm going to show you why my second one was easier than my first. So while both births were these amazing, empowering experiences, I did do a couple things differently with my second, and it created a noticeable difference. So I would say that with my second birth, it resembled as natural as an event as possible instead of one that looked a little more like a medical procedure. All right, so starting off with my first, since I had never been pregnant before and I was really wanting to attempt a natural childbirth, my husband and I spent the better part of 9 months learning and researching as much as we possibly could. So we took Bradley method, hypnobirth. My husband's a chiropractor who's certified in Webster's technique. So actually his whole practice almost started shifting because he developed such a passion in prenatal care. So we really focused on things like fetal positioning. I also got familiar with spinning babies. I also exercised throughout the entire pregnancy, and I just really immersed myself into natural birth culture. And I remember of all the things that I did, the biggest thing that helped me prepare was working on my mindset as well as my deep breathing. So several times per week, I would draw a bath, I turned on some relaxing music, and I would really work on taking deep breaths and just meditating. So I had to envision a healthy pregnancy and a healthy labor over and over and over again. And I also had 2 or 3 affirmations that I would repeat to myself, like breath to baby equals healthy baby, and I'm okay, my baby's okay. And when I finally reached my due date, I had agreed to do an ultrasound because I had no signs of labor and I just wanted to make sure my baby was healthy, the amniotic fluid was good, all of that good stuff. So since everything looked great, my doctor didn't have a problem when I went 2 weeks past my due date. So I will say I chose my OBGYN because he had a reputation for having a high success rate with VBACs in our area. And even though I obviously wasn't attempting a vaginal birth after cesarean, I figured he would be on my same wavelength or at least close enough. So he was great overall, even though he did recommend inducing a handful of times, and he tried to set reasonable expectations for me by informing me multiple times that, I only see a handful of women pull off natural birth each year. So I guess looking back on it, maybe he wasn't the most encouraging doctor, but I guess I always felt like if I wanted to go natural, it was up to me and not my doctor. So when the big day finally came and labor began, contractions started around 2 a.m. and continued every minute to 2 minutes for the duration of my labor. Lucky me, right? It was a long one. So there was a time when I thought my water broke. So we actually went to my OB's office and he did an internal exam, and it turned out that my water hadn't broke, but I was 4 centimeters dilated. And this was around 2 p.m. and around 12 hours since my very first contraction began. After that, we went home, I continued to walk, I stretched, I changed positions, I made sure I was eating and resting. And right around 9 o'clock, I shifted into late first stage labor. And this is when contractions really became intense and I began experiencing natural birth at its peak. So during this stage, I wasn't doing anything besides dealing with these intense contractions. And my husband says that I was in my zone and just completely focused. So he gave me that space I needed over the next hour or so. But eventually he noticed the mood and vibe change, and he decided it was time to leave for the hospital. And you can recognize this stage of labor because it takes on this seriousness that wasn't there before. This is when you really need to be in control and focused. And this is also where the meditation and my self-affirming phrases really helped me. I just kept repeating, I'm okay, my baby's okay. Breath to baby equals healthy baby. That affirmation, really triggered in my mind, let's keep doing these deep breaths. And I think this stage is crucial for a spouse to recognize or your birthing partner, especially if you're trying to labor at home as long as possible. Most people go off that 4-1-1 or 6-1-1 rule, but because my contractions were 2 minutes apart the whole day, we couldn't rely on this method. So after we checked into the hospital, I was now in labor for 22 hours. And several contractions later, my baby's heart rate actually dropped for about a minute or so. And I remember this was the only time during my labor that I began to experience this unsure, uneasy feeling. But that's when, again, the meditation helps so greatly because I was able to get back into that positive mindset. So I tried several position changes, and luckily his heart rate did go right back up when I began actually using the peanut ball. And around this time, they did another internal exam just to check my progress. And I can't stress the importance of this, I never found out how dilated I was at this time. But later, once my son was born, I learned that I was still only 4 centimeters. I had assumed that because it had been close, it's going on to 23 hours of labor with back-to-back contractions, I was thinking I have to be getting close to 10. And looking back, not knowing how dilated I was, turned out to be a crucial decision, because if I had known I was still only 4 centimeters, it would have been so hard to keep a positive mindset. I just felt like I was getting to the end of the road. And after about 30 minutes using the peanut ball, I progressed from 4 to 10 centimeters, and then it was go time. And this is why I recommend not knowing your dilation, because it's always nice, of course, when you progress evenly, but sometimes you progress slow and then you catch up quickly like I did. So it's all about your thoughts and attitude at this point, and a low dilation number can completely crush your confidence. But anyways, let's get back to the labor. So when I reached the push phase, I still waited to push through several contractions, and I didn't push until I felt like he was already coming out. So my push just supplemented the process. And my entire push phase was only a few minutes long, and the only thing that went wrong was I had horrible tearing. I actually ended up having 4th-degree tears. But overall, I was healthy and my baby was healthy, and I wouldn't have traded that experience for anything in the world. Now, on to my second birth. So with my second birth, leading up to labor, my husband and I were creating the content and filming our online natural birth course. So my mind was completely focused on natural birth. I didn't meditate as often this time around, mostly because I had a busy toddler on my hands, but I did continue exercising throughout the entire pregnancy, and I also worked on various techniques for the baby's positioning. And here's how things went down. So with my second son, my water broke around 9 p.m. and contractions began around 11 p.m. So this time my water broke first. So throughout the night, contractions were increasing in intensity and they were getting closer together, so I felt like things were progressing well. And around 7 a.m. we decided to make our way to the hospital, which is around 30 minutes from our house. So when we got to the hospital and checked in, my contractions had actually stopped completely. And I had a midwife this time around, and she did an internal exam, and even though I didn't find out how dilated I was, she later told me that when I had arrived to the hospital, I was already at 9 centimeters. And I believe my labor stalled because of that 30-minute drive to the hospital. So when I got to my room, I started moving and changing positions, and this actually initiated labor right away. So within a couple of minutes, my contractions returned, and let me tell you, they returned quickly. In fact, within 10 minutes of getting into my room, I was already in the push phase. I remember the nurse trying to get an IV in my arm, and things were just happening so fast. I was like, lady, this isn't gonna happen. So I was already into the push phase, and my biggest concern this time around was tearing again, which I think was a legit concern from the first labor. So the 3 things that I did differently this time around was perineal massage, and I also used alternative push positions, and I didn't push at all during the push phase. So with my first, I delivered on my back with my legs up, the traditional way you think of when you see labor in the movies. But with my second, I delivered on my hands and knees on the bed. And the reason I chose this position is because it allows gravity to assist you. So with my first, I delivered on my back with my legs up in the traditional way, the way you envision childbirth when you watch a movie. With my second though, I delivered on my hands and knees on the bed. And the reason for this is because in this position, it allows gravity to assist you. So with my first, when I was on my back, I was just so exhausted and tired, I didn't feel like trying any other position. However, looking back, I wish I would have mustered up the energy to just flip over and get into a different position. Because when you're on your back, you're really working against gravity, while you're on your hands and knees, you're really allowing gravity to work with you. So I decided this time around not to push because I felt like a forceful push could lead to another tear. So the whole process of the push phase took around 15 minutes, and it was a very slow and controlled process, and it didn't resemble a medical procedure process at all. In fact, my husband was able to catch our son when he was born, which was so cool. And it was something he had really hoped he would have been able to do with our first, but my first just came out like a little torpedo. So this was just a much more controlled, relaxed birth. So overall, I had 2 great experiences, but the minor changes I made the second time took a great experience and made it even better. So I hope my birth stories are able to encourage you. I know whenever I was pregnant, I would listen to as many birth stories as I could. And unfortunately, many people shared really terrible birth experiences with me, which I never really understood. I still don't understand it. It's kind of like telling someone a horrifying story about surgery as they're wheeling into the operating room about to have that exact same surgery. So I just really enjoy telling my positive birth stories to help encourage women and let them know they can do this and have a great experience just like I did. Now, in terms of the pain, I will say that childbirth is definitely not something I would want to experience on a daily basis. And I'm aware there are some natural birth techniques out there that will tell you that you can have childbirth pain-free. And I just can't really buy into that. But here's how I look back on the pain. When you're not getting induced with Pitocin and you decide to go a natural route and choose that natural path to childbirth, your body produces massive amounts of hormones. I call them the feel-good hormones of oxytocin and endorphins. And this is what I refer to as nature's epidural. And let me tell you, these babies help a lot. And on top of that feeling you get when that precious baby is born and you're holding that baby in your arms outweighs any amount of pain out there. So it just instantly goes away as soon as you have that little baby in your arms. So I guess my take-home message from this video is, I believe anyone can have a natural birth as long as there's no emergencies. So rather than relying on physical strength, you just have to prepare and have the knowledge to navigate through all the situations that could come up and transform a natural event into a medical process. So if you're approaching your due date and you feel like, I think I need some help preparing, be sure to check out our online birth class, The Mason Method for Natural Childbirth. 8 out of 10 women who complete our online course end up having a non-traumatic natural birth without any medical interventions and end up having a fast recovery as well. So just click the link to learn more about our process. I want to wish you nothing but the best of luck. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website for more tips and information on natural childbirth.